or a Q3 on your paper. And what then I need you to do when you get to your seat, look at which Q I put there, Q1, Q2, or Q3. Quickly, guys, you're going to leave. Which question that I put there. And then what you're going to do is look at that question, Q1, Q2, or Q3, up on the board there. And you're going to think about that question, because in a little while, I'm going to then have you share some thinking around that question. So to repeat, you're going to go to your new team. You're going to have sitting there your selling soup problem. You're going to look at which Q, Q1, Q2, or Q3 that I've written on your paper, and you're going to look at that question or questions that are on the board, and you're going to attempt to try and formulate answers for those questions. You're not going to work on the problem where you're at. You're going to work on answering the question. If you have a Q1, you're going to work on how you would answer this one and this one. If you have a Q2, you're going to look at how you can answer that question. If you have a Q3, you're going to look at those questions. Does everybody understand? Okay. So if I don't call your name for the table that I'm at, the people that are currently there are going to have to stand up and move to the back of the room with their things. So this table here is going to be Avery and Keith. This table here is going to be Abby H., Kaylee, and Abigail. And I'll get a chair there in a second. This table here is going to be Aiden and Austin. This table back here is going to be Ellen, Alicia, and Gianna. This table here is going to be Kaden and Ella. This table up here is going to be Jonathan and Chris. This table here is going to be Carson, Walker, and Flynn. This table here is going to be Sean and Tyler F. This table here is Tyler R. and Taylor E. Will Adams, Andy at this table. Milo and Will Fowler here. And Chloe, Tammy, and Natalie here. Okay? So some people have similar people, some people have new people. Okay, do you remember what I had asked you to do now? Who can tell me what I had asked you to do? Get to your seats. Sorry. Abigail, what did I ask you to do now? I'm sorry, 1 second. Could you repeat that? What did I ask you to do, Abigail? Okay. So you're thinking to yourself right now about the question that I've identified for you to look at on the board. So for today, as you're getting settled in your groups, you're going to need your workspace, so you'll want to remove reading books, extra binders, things like that. You really don't even need your electronics today, so those can be put down below. So find the question that you should be looking at, and you're trying to formulate in your mind thoughts about how you would answer that question. You're thinking to yourself how you're going to formulate that answer. Okay. Now what I want you to do is I want you to talk about the answer to that question that you had on your paper. Take turns sharing how you would answer it. So some of you have Q1. I want you to take turns answering. What decisions does Martha need to make? So one person in the group says, I think these are the decisions Martha needs to make, and they state them. Then the other person in the group has an opportunity to answer that. If you agree upon the decisions, then you're going to move to this question. If you're question 2, you're discussing that together. If you're question 3, you're discussing that. You're
how much of each soup she needs to buy and how much of each bread. You can look at like out of 40, white bread, brown
white bread, so I think she would probably
Both kind of got there. We're going to start to talk about how
I found that 40 of it was white and 10 was brown. So we put in 1/4 of 500 is 1.5. So 125 pieces of brown and the rest 375 of white. With the soups, it's kind of scattered. I think we can count how much of each soup has the most, or if they're all even. I think they're all even in the bag. That's how much she did. Because no, the profit is how much.
So adding them up to what would that do? What does that tell you when you add them up?
Because she is getting so maybe we can find the income.
Alright, so Tyler, do you understand this method? Do you agree with that method to come up with a fraction of how many soups? Okay. So after you get that fraction, then what would you do?
Then I would put that into 500.
What do you mean by that?
So I would.
Let's say the fraction is 10 out of 40. There are 40 people here, right?
Yeah.
Let's say your fraction was 10 out of 40 for tomato soup. What would you do with it?
Well, I would 500 divided by 40. And I would multiply 40 times that number, and I would find
So let me stop you for a second. So can you repeat what Sean was doing there? Like, do you agree with it or disagree? Do you understand what he's thinking?
Yeah, he's trying to find out how 10 out of 40 is equal to 500 of each.
Okay, so an equivalent fraction, right? Yeah. Okay, so you guys get a strategy. Okay, so that's for the deciding which one. Now, how could you translate that to Martha's cost? How much it's going to cost you? That's what I want you guys to talk about now. Because you already have a strategy. Both of you already had a good strategy for figuring out how many pieces. How are you going to translate? Because the ultimate decision is she wants to know how much she needs to make the most profit. In order to figure out her profit, we need to figure out her costs. So how are you going to use that information? That's what you guys keep talking about now. That's why you have the Q3. If you already understood how to get the number of cans, but now you're trying to figure out how you should get that profit. So talk about the strategy. Okay, now what decisions does Martha have to make?
Buy and what bread.
Okay, so hold on one second. John, Chris, do you think that that's accurate? Is that a decision? Is there any other decisions Martha needs to involve?
No, she also needs to say what bread.
Okay, so we talked about the soup kind and the bread. Is there anything else involved in her strategy or in her decisions? So what does this say here?
No, she needs to decide what is the best to make the most profit.
To make the most profit. So now what is profit associated with? Money. So is there another decision she'll have involved besides what kind of soups?
Yeah.
Okay, what is the other component to the problem?
Wait, I have a question. So, is this 5? Is this like
She has to buy. So that gets into our next piece of information. So we also have to, that's what I'm getting you to understand, is that the other decisions involved is how much it costs for the soup and how much she's going to charge to figure out her profit, right?
Yeah.
So you have more than just the decision of the soup. Do you understand that?
So she also needs to find out what is the best soup.
Okay, so that's why
Without spending.
exactly, without losing money. But before we can get there, your next question up there says, how can you use this information? I want you and Chris to have an idea that you share. How can you use this information to figure out how much of each flavor soup she needs?
Okay.
So that's the question I'm going to leave you with that I want you to figure out.
Can I write it down here because I'm not space.
You don't have to write down, you're just going to talk about it. Okay? Okay, I'm going to give you 1 more minute to discuss your question. 1 more minute.
I think we should how much bread she needs to buy with each kind.
Okay, so do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. If you look at the second question up there, how can you use the information from the survey to help decide how much is each flavor of soup to buy?
Well, we can look at the survey to see like what people like.
Yeah.
So explain that to me. How can you turn it into a percent?
Well, I put how much people like each soup.
You could do that out of 40 and maybe
Okay, because there's 40 total people surveyed. Okay, do you guys agree with that strategy?
We also can like see what soups a lot of people like, so they know like a lot of other people probably like it and to get a lot of that soup, and then like what soup that people don't really like, so she doesn't get like a lot and have like a lot left over.
Okay, good strategy. Okay. Okay, let's come together. I had an opportunity to talk to some groups, and why I wanted you to start off with starting to talk about this a little bit before you worked on your problem is I wanted to make sure all of us understood the problem, first of all, what the problem's asking. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood what decisions Martha has to make. After we talk about that, then we can move to how the survey helps us in figuring that out. Some people had gotten that far the other day, and they were moving now towards coming up with question 2, a way to organize that work. How can you organize all that? Because we have 40 responses covering 4 different pages. And then ultimately, after we have that, we have to figure out Martha's costs, how much income she's going to get to determine her profit. So it cycles back to what decision she has to make. So the groups I talked to, the major decision was what kind of soup she needs to buy and how much of that soup. Can we agree with that? Okay. There's also the bread. She can buy the white bread and the brown bread. Okay. I also talked to this group, besides the amount of soup, what else, Chris and Jonathan, did we explore that we need to take into consideration? Besides what kind of soup and how much bread?
What is the best? How much profit?
So how much profit? So we have to take into consideration the cost. So we have to understand the parameters of the problem and knowing that. Okay, what I want you to do now is I want you to take 5 minutes. I'm only going to give you 5 minutes to continue where you left off on the problem or change some of the method that you started with because you realized you weren't doing the correct starting step. Okay? So I'm going to give you 5 more minutes to continue where you are in the problem on your own. Okay? So you're not sharing right now.
Not sharing. Because how many circles are in each?
So each one of these serves 10 people.
Oh yeah. No. Yeah.
So do you see that? So that's too far to get right now because you can't even get there yet until you start with your first step of figuring out how much of each soup. So that's your first starting point. So you started that process here. Okay, so let's write that down. Now, where does 3 A's come from? There was 3 people that picked tomato soup out of 8 people?
You got way too much soup. Okay, so you're gonna look at
No. How many total people are there? Chris, can you put your binder down and can you help Jonathan with this here a little bit? Because I think you're both in the same spot. There are 40 people, right? Mm-hmm. How many people picked tomato soup out of the 40 people? Well, you have to look.
16.
Now, do you agree with that? Look at your thinking. Where's your thinking around that? We're going to do everything on here, though, okay? So let's look on here, Chris. How did Jonathan get 16 people? What did he do? How did he get 16?
I believe he looked at it and checked off everyone else's tomato and said,
Did you get 16 when you did that?
to get the best possible answer, like 10. And then she'll let you work together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's put that book down though because I see that that's a little scattered, the information there. We're going to do it on here. So now when he's reading his, can you double check in his thinking? 1, 2, 3. So what would the fraction be to represent tomato soup?
16 and 40.
Okay, so you should start with that fraction, right?
Could I divide it by 4 and do
Right. Let's see, 16 out of 40. Let's see. Write that down. And Chris, you should have that down somewhere too. 16 out of 40 for tomato. Is this a fraction? Write it as a fraction because that's what you said it was, a fraction. Okay. Now, what do you want to do now with that fraction? Okay. Okay.
And then,
so that takes care of one soup. Now, are you going to repeat that process for each soup, correct?
yeah,
Okay, and you have to record what that is though, because when you look back at this, it's not going to mean anything unless you know. What is 2/5 representing?
tomato soup, so 2/5.
Okay, so now you're going to do that for each of the soups, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so keep going with that idea.
We have about 3 minutes left.
There was like a graph we did, and there was like I divided it because like she would have to 125 cans of soup. Like
Okay, so where did you get 125 cans of soup? Why do you have 125 cans of soup?
because there was like to split it into 4, so it'd be 125, but some of them were
Split what into 4? Hold on.
the soup like because it's
So you think she should buy the same amount of tomato and potato and chicken
No.
and okay. So what?
like on this one, it was even to the veggie.
How did you know that? Okay, let's start here. How did you get 5 liters of potato and 5 liters of veggie? Why did you pick that?
I divided them both because they had the
So do you see how you have to start with showing me why 5? Just because you like the number 5? Like why did you come up with 5? So that's where you have to start. So before just dividing things, you have to start with a way to organize your information to figure out how many liters of soup she needs. Now, she can only buy the bottles in 2.5 liters. Okay, so I get what you're doing here. You're trying to divide this. But my question to you is why 125? And why 5 here? Where does 5 come from?
well, because like there was a graph that when like we were working together.
Where do you see a graph?
Aiden had a graph
Well, what did the graph show?
the number of people that
Okay, and how many people picked potato? Let's pick one soup that we're working with. Let's pick tomato. Okay. How many people picked tomato? tomato?
Well, when it's
Just see how you have to start there.
Okay.
Can I see the graph you're talking about? So this is what you're talking about. So that way it's a tally, right? So what you did here is he said this many people picked tomato. How many people is this?
16.
Out of how many total people? How many people were surveyed?
16? No. 32.
No, we're gonna leave with that question because we're gonna talk about that right now because there's some other people stuck there.
Okay, let's stop for a minute, please, now. Stop on this problem, please. Pencils down. In talking to a couple groups, this problem has multiple layers. I see a lot of division happening. But when I'm asking you what your numbers mean, what you're dividing, you're having a difficult time telling me what they mean. And if you don't know what those numbers mean, the division problem is pointless because you have no idea what that division problem is going to produce as far as the meaning of that number. So let's back up for 1 second together as a whole class before I set you to come up with a plan of how you're going to do this together. Who can tell me a way to start? A way to start to figure out how many cans of soup are needed. I need pencils down and I need you contributing to our whole class discussion right now. Because we all need to understand a way to start this problem. Ella.
Well, I figured out that you need 125
Okay, freeze. That is an answer. I want to know how you got that answer. I want to know a starting point. I don't want to hear answers right now. I want to hear what did you do first?
What I did, so if 2.5 liters, which is what she buys, equals 10 people, then she'll have to multiply that by 50, because 10 times 50 is 500, and she needs to feed
2.5 liters serves 10 people. Okay? Then what did you say?
Well, I said 10 times 50 is 500. So if you get 50 things of that, it'll feed 500 people, and she wants to feed 500 people. So,
Okay, every liter of soup is worth 2.5 liters. It serves 10 people. Do we agree with Ella's math that if she takes 10 people times 50, 10 serve it, 10 of these, times 50 you get 500?
no.
So it's help me understand what's going on. Abigail?
I think, I'm not exactly positive, but I don't think she should be multiplying 10 by 50 because it kind of sounds like you're giving 10 people 50 servings almost. But
So we need to give meaning to these numbers. That's what we need to do, because that's where we're getting confused. Ellen.
So the 10 is the 10 people.
Okay. 10 people.
And then the 50, I think, is the amount of people, like when you added up how many people wanted each kind of soup.
How many people were surveyed on the colored sheets?
40.
40. There's another number now. 40 is not part of this. So let's stick with this still. So this 50 is not how many were surveyed, because we just said that 40 were surveyed. So we need to know what 50 is and what 500 is. What is the 50? What's the 500? Keep.
500 is the people that she wants to serve.
Wants to serve these people. Okay?
And then the 50 is how many bottles she needs to buy.
Okay, so let's talk about that. If every bottle serves 10 people, if I do 50 times 10, 10 people get served with 50 bottles per bottle, right? Does that produce feeding 500 people? Yes. So do we agree with this logic? Okay. So now where do I go? haven't even started the problem yet, but okay, let's hear your comment.
So what I did is I got all the information from the sheets.
Okay, so now you're going to be talking about this number 40.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I saw who wanted, like how many people wanted a certain soup over the other soups, and then I put that number added all together over 40.
Okay, so let's back up and connect this idea to Sean. We now know that we need 50 bottles of soup, right? Do we know how many of what kind to buy? No. So now Sean's getting into how do we decide if we should buy 50 tomatoes, 40 tomatoes, 10 tomatoes, 3 potatoes? I don't know. So Sean's talking about that idea, and he says, I'm going to take the 40 surveys, and I'm going to start with tomato. And what did you find out about tomato, Sean?
There were 16 people tomatoes.
16 people surveyed said they preferred tomato soup out of what? 40. So what's one way to show that? Abby? Okay. Can we stop there then?
No.
What else do we need to do? Figure out all the other soups and the breads. So some people aren't even, you're trying to jump here and do all kinds of division before you even have the information from the problem. So if you haven't started here yet, and this is not clearly labeled somewhere, you cannot finish or start or continue the problem. Okay, what you're going to do now is on your yellow poster, you are going to work together to produce an outline for how you're going to solve the problem. What are you going to do first? Explain it. What are you going to do second? Explain it. What are you going to do third? So on the front of your poster right now, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to produce an outline. Your outline is not doing it. Your outline is explaining to me the steps. I'm going to do this first, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. Keep in mind what decisions Martha has to make, and your outline has to demonstrate your progression to get those decisions made. You are not doing calculations on the front of the poster. You're not solving anything. You're telling me in words, in an outline form, what you're doing step by step to solve the problem. Work together right now. So you should not be working on your individual sheets. You're working on the yellow poster. Talk. What's your first step? Write it down.
We personally am not the best at
I know what I mean? Like I did that. Like I thought. It felt a little easy. Just a little.
I had 3 groups doing that, and then they started to divide. So they were knowing that they had to do that, but I guess.
What if we just said, I want, for every number I want a word next to it? What if we just said, I don't know.
And that's my issue, because I don't know where to let them go so far away.
Yes,
There's different ways of getting there as possible. And if you
Streamline it, and it's too.
And I think we
then
should
you
both
end up
find
with
fractions.
more
I think that's
simple. And that's, I mean, that's fine too. It's just that.
But how do I get them though? I mean, I had Abby over there. I had 3 groups taking 125, dividing it by 2.5, and there was no
So
reason
they
at
have to
all.
put words on it. What's
And
one
so
thing?
he put leaders and he said people, and that was completely wrong. So I guess then how do I?
But part of it is, not everybody's going to produce the right answer. And then they're going to look at each other's posters and they can decide about it and go, oh. I mean, some of it is just allowing the dysfunction because we're not supposed to necessarily teach, right?
Right.
We're supposed to assess where they are.
No, multiply
To
the
me,
fraction.
it's really, these are so hard. Like I struggle with the problem solving. But I've also invited them in to watch like me teach.
But there's so many different ways to go from this point. Like this is not even
Yeah, no, I
the
know.
iceberg. Like they still, I mean, I had two groups that still think
But when I
better.
did it, I never did the 50. I did the 500 the whole time. I figured out how many servings and then I did it.
See, I did that first. I did like Ella. I did,
Yeah.
but because I wanted to know how many bottles I need to work with.
I just figure out how much money each, and then of each.
Guess I'm standing up from my way of doing it.
Okay, tell me steps. Tell me your steps. What's step one? What are you gonna do first?
Well, step one, we figured out how much soup we needed.
Okay, write that down. Step one. We're gonna figure out how much soup we
So
need.
if I just write like a one.
Yep. And then you write your step. Then you write a number 2. Then you write your step. An outline is just your steps in order. Okay?
We learned an outline last year, and it was like a phenomenal.
Okay, then let's not call it an outline. We'll call it your steps to complete the problem.
The Roman numerals and the letters snake in the head. Then step 3. Find out bread. Package. Number of packages. Add them all together.
Put them in fraction form? Put what in fraction? I guess I want to know what you do.
I'm trying to figure out the answer for the how much liters of soup she needs.
Oh,
So, how you do that is by multiplying. Well, you figure out the cost of the soup per 2.5 liters.
But before you can even figure out the cost, I'm not even talking about the money. I'm talking about how many liters of soup she needs, it says. So how do you know that she needs, let's say you think it's 7 liters. How did you get 7 liters of tomato soup?
7 liters of tomato soup. 7 is not divisible by 2.5.
No, I just made up the number 7. Okay, let's go back to this question here. I understand this. Figure out how much of the 40 people want a certain kind of soup. So in our example, 16 out of 40 want a tomato. Okay, then you say after you do that, you're going to find out how many liters of soup she needs. So how does 16 over 40 give you the liters of soup? Does that mean she needs 16 liters? What does that mean?
You need to divide the numerator by the denominator.
And what does that do?
It gives you a decimal.
And what does that decimal represent? Okay, but what is that? What in the context of this problem, what is the decimal? Chickens, eggs, soup, bread, what is that decimal representing? People? Money? So that's, on this step here, I need you to write to me how you're going to do that. So you told me you're going to divide the numerator by the denominator to get a decimal, but you need to tell me what that does then. What does that decimal tell you?
How much of a certain kind of soup out of
Okay, and why are we getting soup out of 100?
because that is easily divisible. Because 500 is easily divisible by 100.
Why do we need to do 500 divided by 100? So that's I'm putting you on the spot because I need you to put some more thought into this step. I'm not saying the step is wrong. I'm just questioning how are you going to do that step. Okay?
Maybe find out what the decimal is out of 5, which is each by 5, which is the 100.
I don't want you to do that. I just want you to tell me.
It will show how many cups you have, how many mugs you have, and divide that by 10. Find out how many steps.
We just need to figure out we just need to tell you
How much liters there are in soup. So. Oh, wait, no.
step 3.
Okay.
We don't know how we got it. Unless we show how we did it on here without actually showing the answer.
Find out. So we gotta do we divide by how many you get the decimal, one to the decimal, you have a fraction out of
So you're going to buy 1/8 of a liter.
how much there is in each section.
Like,
So see this, and then step 1 is making a graph, and then put that graph in fractions.
Okay, and now what are these fractions telling me then?
So
2/5 of the mixture will be so-and-so.
We have a mixture.
2/5 of, yeah.
Like, out of the total amount of soup they get, 2/5 of it will be so-and-so.
Okay, and what is so and so though? I don't know what that means.
So she's saying 2/5 of her thing she's selling should be tomato soup, and then
Okay, so write down tomato soup here for me, because I want to explore it. So now what do? After you figured out 2/5 of tomato soup,
then we write.
so she's going to walk in the store and say, I need 2/5 tomato soup.
And then, no, we're talking about how
So how does this help Martha decide how much she should buy?
because this is saying out of like 500,
So what's your step 3 going to be?
find out how much it is out of 500.
Write that down. Step 3. Find out how much what though?
How much soup she needs out of
500.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so let me hear step 1.
So first we gathered all of the info from the surveys,
Okay.
and then we put the info into fractions and divided them into its simplest form, having a common denominator.
Okay, hold on. So you take a fraction and put it in simplified form. Is that right so far?
The most common denominator.
Okay, so simplified form.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then after that we divided 500 by 20, which is the lowest
Why?
denominator.
Why do you divide 500 by 20?
Because that's how many soup she's going to sell.
So when you put the fraction into simplest form and then you divide. Nice. Okay, I guess I'm confused on that step. What is that step doing for you?
It's finding out the numerator.
And what does the numerator mean?
The amount of mugs that people would
Okay, so that's what I need clarification of. So I want you to put representations for the numbers. So if you say numerator or denominator, you tell me in the context of this problem, what is the numerator representing? Because you have to connect your steps to this problem. So when you so then I divide the numerator. So then you divide what is the numerator representing?
the number of mugs.
So then I divide the number of mugs by 10. So go through your steps, and every time you have numerator, denominator, I want to know what that represents in the problem, because I think you're going to catch, by doing that, any clarification that needs to be still made. Okay? So maybe down here, instead of writing in a paragraph, just write step 1. Let's start with your step 1. So write number 1. You said create fractions from survey. And that, and where the numerator is the kind of soup and the denominator is the what?
Amount of mugs that she wants to sell.
Okay, wait, you were writing. So the numerator is going to be the
number of mugs that people want of that type.
And the denominator in the fraction is what? What is the denominator represent?
Total number of mugs.
Of people. Right? Not mugs. Because, well, okay, mugs, but each mug represents a person. Okay, so we understand that. Step 2. You're going to simplify the fractions, you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, step 3. Okay, now this is the step we need to clarify. So, up here you said, after that we divide 500 by 20, the lowest common denominator, right? Is that what that is?
20 is the lowest common denominator that they all share.
Okay.
Out of 40.
So let's use that 16.
Okay. So you're turning them back into 40. So you simplified them and then you're turning them back into 40?
Well, no. We simplified them to 20, which is the lowest common denominator that they all share.
Okay, so tell me about that step, what that step is doing in the context of the problem. It's finding what for you? What are you finding out by doing that?
How, the number of people out of 500 instead of just 40.
There you go. That's what I need to know.
So we found out how many people.
No, mugs needed out of 500 instead of 40.
So we found out.
Do you see how you're talking about the context of the problem with your steps? Okay. So keep going with those in simplified form, in shortened form, in meaning for the task. Okay? Okay, I'm going to need you to stop. That was longer than the time that I wanted, but I had some good conversations with some groups. Okay. We are at a point now where you have an outline of some steps that you're going to solve this problem, start to solve the problem. Okay? Now, when we got here, we talked about one method, one strategy for kind of doing this. There are other strategies and techniques that we could have gone down and done a different path with them. Knowing that we have multiple parts to this problem, there's going to be multiple numbers that we're going to generate. What I'm going to challenge and encourage you to do when you go to solve this problem on the other side, which will start that process tomorrow, is every number you put on your paper needs to be identified with what that number represents. For example, if I have 16 over 40, I want to know what that 16 is, and I want to know what that 40 is. In this context of the problem, what is 16 representing? 16 is representing what? Andy?
How many people voted for tomato soup in the survey?
So 16 is people who wanted tomato soup. What is the 40? Milo? Total people surveyed. So when you're working on your problem tomorrow, you are going to be asked to, whenever you have a problem, a number written down, I want to know what that number is. This is a pretty easy thing to figure out. It's going to get more difficult when we start to do some calculations. If you have the number 2.5 written on your paper, I need to know what the 2.5 is representing. The last thing I want to do is I want you to send one person to look at the steps of another poster to get an idea of some other ways people have listed their steps. I've seen all the posters because I've been walking around. I want you to have the advantage of sending another person to look at the poster to see what steps are involved in other ideas, other ways people are listing their steps. Okay? So the easiest way to do this is I'm going to have you stand up from your tables
And I'm going to have you kind of just circulate around the room, and we'll walk, for you guys, counterclockwise. And I just want you to spend some time looking at other people's outline, how they listed it. Pay attention to the first step they've listed. Pay attention to this idea of if other groups identified what the numbers are representing, or if they used words like numerator, denominator, common multiple, or did they say what mathematically those numbers represent? Okay? So I'm going to ask that you do this in about 3 minutes by looking around at other posters. If there's already people standing at a poster, go to a different poster to look at. You probably won't have a chance to look at everybody's, but you can look at some other ideas of how they outline. So leave your poster and stand up and go look at some other posters and how they outlined it. Yeah, we'll do everybody. I was going to send one person, but I think this way will be easier.
It's not like that to explain.
Yeah, you're not going to explain it to each other. We don't have time. Okay, let's make our way back. Take a minute right now, and with your current partner now, your original partner, I want you each to share 2 observations. 2 things you noticed about some other team's posters. So you're going to go around your team right now, and each person's going to share 2 observations that they noticed about another team's poster.
Okay. Every single one they found out how much they kind of like people wanted just kind of soup out of the survey.
So share observations.
Yeah. I saw that one team had a graph to show how many like each kind of soup. But I also saw that another team had a blank to have the reader while you're reading.
I jumped to Okay. Can you give us another observation?
Some were neat and had some had 2 steps, but others had
6.
Okay, so some people thought that they could accomplish it in 2 steps, where others had a lot more.
But like 1 step was like could have been like 3 steps.
Okay, so they combined too many pieces into 1 step.
Yeah, and the other one, their stuff was ignored.
Okay, so now looking at yours, thinking about things that you've observed from others, is there anything you would change or add to your poster?
Yeah.
Okay, so take a minute right now and start that process before I stop you in about a minute, okay? You'll have some time tomorrow, but start that thinking.
Should we cross this out?
Okay, let's talk together here now. Hopefully you are able to share a couple observations that may or may not give you any insight into how you may want to add to your steps or change your steps. Tomorrow when we come in, you're going to get your poster back. You'll have a few minutes to finish your outline or make any changes to your outline. And then tomorrow, you're going to spend the majority of the class time solving the problem. And we're going to have one main focus that we'll talk about tomorrow at the beginning of class to target and zero in on solving this problem. Because we talked, there's lots of different things that we need to figure out. But tomorrow when we meet and we go to solve the problem, we're going to all have the same common goal. Okay? So what I need you to do on your posters, if you haven't already done so, is put everybody's name on it. Remember where you are sitting. Put your paper clip back on your problem and your colored sheets. Leave that on top of your poster. I will take all of that stuff and save it for you till tomorrow. Remember, your closure questions are due tomorrow. Closure questions.